Hey everybody, welcome back to the Program Podcast. I'm Tim Fulton.
I'm Andy Smith.
And I'm out of practice somehow, despite doing this every week
Yeah,
for years.
it's okay.
This is What Do You Got? A little segment where we come to the table with a topic that the other guy doesn't know about, and we chit-chat about it for a little while. Andy's turn. Andy, what do you got?
Should there be a CIA?
All right.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in. So I'm going to guess that there's a premise behind this.
Yeah,
and
it was.
we're
I
going
was
to-
listening to a bunch of podcasts, and some of the podcasts they get into like conspiratorial things and all this stuff. And one of the things that always comes up that I feel like I'm like half in, half out on. Right.
Okay.
So one of the things is like JFK assassination and like how like he was trying to basically dismantle the CIA and all this stuff. And conspiracy theory people, a lot of times you'll hear them say like, you know, the government doesn't tell us anything and blah, 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 and this and that. And is a percentage of me that agrees, but then doesn't agree. So off the top of my head, the things that I agree with is like, yeah, like they shouldn't be basically like telling us that they're doing stuff that they're not doing. And, you know, we should be kind of be more informed about like actual decisions that are being made and all this stuff. And also because it's, you know, it's a lot of money, a lot of funding and all this stuff. Basically like, you know, transparency and all that. But then the other side of me that like is like the history nerd who like looking back in hindsight when things were like a little bit more in the open, I guess you say, I'm kind of like, are we capable of knowing everything and still being able to function or make good decisions?
Mhm.
And I guess the one of the other things is like the CIA is a central intelligence agency. A lot of it is like things that aren't supposed to be known by everyone, and that's part of what it is, right? So part of what you do is you don't let people know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of hard to do that if you have to make it public.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that are done in there that have come out that are like really, you know, oh shit, I can't believe they were going to think about doing that, or I can't believe they actually did that. And then there's also a lot of things where like, thank God that they did that. Thank God they were there. The main reason why I'm like, when it comes to things like the CIA, and I don't just mean the CIA, anything that's like in that category, is because other places are not going to get rid of them. Their versions.
Their version of the CIA.
And it's very kind of like a simple thing where you're like, oh, like, are, you know, nuclear weapons bad? It's like, well, yeah, they're bad. And they're like, well, then we should get rid of them. It's like, yeah, but is everyone else doing that? And they're like, no. But like, if we do, it'll be better. And you're like, yeah, but everyone else is doing that. So like, that's kind of like, so like, where do you sit on this kind of stuff?
Well, so talking about the CIA specifically, because that's what the podcast is about.
Yeah, and I have a couple points I'll bring up throughout to keep it.
I agree with you that there's a good and bad side. There's the angel and demon side of things. If the CIA was altruistic to its original intended purpose, I would be wholly behind it and for it. But I definitely think that they have outstretched their reach a little bit, going with the conspiracy theories and all that sort of thing. I think from the get-go, they're supposed to be an international organization. The FBI is supposed to be in charge of anything domestic. But a lot of times you hear the CIA playing a role in domestic affairs that they're really not supposed to be a part of. And they do it, it's almost like a power grab, like to protect themselves or to whatever.
Yeah.
So that part of it makes me really iffy. Makes me very iffy. And like you said, we very rarely know what they're doing out of necessity, more or less. So it's really kind of hard to pinpoint, like, you're the bad guys because of XYZ. We can only say you're the bad guys because we think of XYZ. And they're like, nope, wrong. We didn't do it.
Yeah.
And even when they eventually do release documents, quote unquote, explaining like what they've been doing, and like it's always like 50 years after the fact, 90% of it's I almost said retroactive, is redacted.
Yeah.
So we don't.
And I think that there is a lot of good reasons for that.
Yeah. I'm hesitant to be all for it, but at the same time, I'm not against it. I'm in a really weird spot with this. But they, like you were saying, they do serve a good purpose, again, when it comes to international things. And I'm thinking specifically right now, they're probably playing a very large role in the Ukrainian war. We have a lot of military intelligence, and I'm assuming that a lot of it's based on satellites and blah, 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 blah. But to believe that CIA is playing no role in that whatsoever would be foolish.
Yeah.
So, of course, the CIA is playing a hand in a war that is not a domestic war. It's not a United States war, but it's something that's within our interest. And by doing so, they are preventing U.S. from actually being actively involved. So there's a lack of culpability there, even though we can...
Well, that's what I was going to say, too. Like, since they're not really, like, and we're talking, like, you know, things that they're doing that are not at liberty to be open to the public. How many things have they done that the majority, or at least a portion of the American people, would agree with that they've done that they can't say? It's only really the bad stuff that comes out that we hear about that we don't like.
Yeah.
So if, for instance, like, it was like, oh yeah, like they stopped this guy from like murdering children in another country, but it was a country that we weren't allowed to be in because of XYZ treaty. And we sent these guys in so that they could
take care of
go get them out.
Yeah.
And it's like, you'll never know about that, but it's something that they've done. The part that's like, it gets in the weeds is where you're, like you said, if they did what they originally set out to do, you'd be in wholehearted agreement with it. But you get that weird scenario where you're trusting these people to make decisions that they can't ask you your opinion on.
Yeah.
And they have to make these decisions in a timely manner, all this stuff. But then obviously they're always going to sometimes make decisions that you don't agree with.
Yeah.
So is that enough right there to take them away? Because there's definitely a necessity for them.
Yeah.
But then you get into the whole like the Freedom of Information Act and like spying on their own people and all that stuff. And that's where it gets like, well, hold on. Like, what are you doing that for? And I'm sure there's legitimate reasons for it. It's more so like, where's the line?
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, these guys, like, they're kind of supposed to cross the line in certain ways. It's kind of their job because they're doing things that they're not supposed to be doing, but that in their collective effort, they feel is in the best, at least on paper, they feel is in the best interest of the United States.
Yeah.
So it'd almost be like, I feel like when you're trying to inform everyone about all the decisions, it's like, you ever be in a group of like 15 people and you're trying to decide where to eat?
Yeah.
Right?
It's impossible.
It's impossible. So if you just had one person that when you got there was like, I'm deciding where we're eating, you might have a couple of people who are like, oh, I hate that place. But guess what? You didn't wait till every place was closed and make no decision because nobody can agree.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either. It's a very, I think it's just one of those things that we kind of just have to accept exists. I don't think we can actively dismantle it. I think that would take us way too far back on the world stage. But at the same time, I say that, and again, I'm saying this as someone who's literally sitting in an armchair.
Yeah.
So take my opinion with a grain of salt. But I really wish that America would stop playing world police directly. I think we should have influence over what people do, but I don't think we should have as much direct control as we currently intend.
I have such like mixed emotions on that because this is like the most peaceful time in human history. Like, as fucked up as that sounds, like giving what's going on and like the wars have been fought, but it's pretty much like the most peaceful time where, like, not in a long time have two superpowers been at war. Like, right? So I feel like America had this, not really, I mean, I'm sure like if the people in power had to choose, they would obviously choose to do it, but it was kind of just like an opportunity. And if you're somebody that's in charge of a country, right, and you got to the point where you're in charge of a country, you're going to play statistics, right? You're going to play the rule book, what has shown and all this shit.
Yeah.
So you're looking back and you're like, hey, listen, history has shown not more than X amount of years has ever gone by when there's not a fucking superpower versus superpower in the world. So if we have the opportunity to set up army bases in these other allied countries, like, we need to do that.
Yeah.
We need to do that. And it becomes more like sensitive in times of peace, because it's almost like America's like, everybody settle down, like, we're here. But then again, with something like Russia versus Ukraine, it's like, well, thank God we have these things all over ready to be deployed, because if we didn't have that, like, who else would be getting fucked with impunity? And then now we have to risk, like, breaking an international law to, like, go into that country when you're not supposed to. But if you already have a thing there, so it's very like I think we think we're way more evolved than we are.
Yeah.
As far as, like, we're just all peace and love today. We're not there, especially not the people that are in charge. So to think that, like, everyone's just going to play nice is not smart.
People are quick to forget. They're
very quick to forget. And again, that's where I think, like, the CIA thing, when people say, like, you know, the people deserve to know and this and that, I'm like, dude, like, we can't even agree on, like, what should be on TV.
Yeah.
Or what shows should be allowed to say what words. Like, you think we're going to be able to all agree on international policy for every decision to be made? So, I don't know. I as fucked up as it sounds, I tend to lean more towards, I guess it would be, like, conservative side with that, where I would rather seem like overly protective and overly paranoid, but safe, from other countries, not from ourselves, then be like, fuck, you know, I wish we would have done that, because then we wouldn't be invaded right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to grasp almost a lot of times.
Yeah, I think that it is like it's like multiple, like, universes of 3D chess going on at the same time, and every time you make, like, a decision like that, it's like the flap of the butterfly's wings that affects something else, and it's so big and complex, which is why, like, when people bring up that, like, oh, there's like the whatever you want to call them, Illuminati, fucking people that are up in, you know, in charge. And there's some people that say, like, well, those are the people that have grown up in the system, that have been privy to the information about how the world as, like, a organism actually works together.
Yeah.
And it's like, so as evil as these fucking people can be, it's like they're kind of the only ones that can keep the anthill from turning on itself.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it sucks to say that, but it makes sense in a way.
It does. It's hard, because my main thing, going back to my original point, the international stuff, yeah, I agree with. I really wish that they would calm down with any domestic affairs, but at the same time, you can't not, because, like you said at the beginning, the CIA isn't a unique organization. Other superpowers have their own versions of that.
Yes.
KGB. So if other organizations have that version, then it's safe to assume that we have to have some sort of defense against their CIAs.
Yeah.
And to do so, our CIA probably has to work domestically to some capacity. Now, then we start getting into the conversation of, well, how much are we relying on security versus risk? If we believe that we have truly been compromised and nuclear technology is on the line here, well, an answer to that might be we're going to start keeping surveillance on the American citizens, and we can't do that well, but we can look for keywords and this, that, the other thing. But on the flip side, now we're watching American citizens, which there might be a handful of quote-unquote agents, spies. But we're keeping an eye on 300 million people, which, as the libertarian as I am, is fucking terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Because it's a short jump from, all right, we're watching this for this reason, to, all right, we're watching all of you because it's in your best interest when we do that.
Yes.
So I go back and forth with stuff like that because there is no clear-cut answer. It's almost like there's the wrong answer either way, like there is no right answer. There's only a wrong answer.
And here's the thing, like when you're talking about like what you just said, like people trying to infiltrate the country, so you have to start watching your own citizens. Like all these people are very smart, right? It's just like drug dealers getting drugs into the country. Like they're always a step ahead because they have to be. Because if they're not, they don't get the drugs in. So if you like make a law saying like, okay, well, the CIA is not allowed to spy on religious groups, then it's just like, well, then we'll just make a religious group and pretend that we're in that and then just go infiltrate through that because we know we're safe.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, and the other thing too, I think, is the American public, it's not like coming out and being like, you're all being spied on and it's a God-given right for the government to do it. I think that they might have thought it was better to be like, hey, look, like we're just going to do it without telling you. And if you're not doing anything, then you're not doing anything. I think where the problem came in was the Patriot Act, where they basically said like, no, like we're doing this to secure your freedoms, and then they just shoved a bunch of shit that they wanted to put in there and worked off of people's fear to get it passed. Yeah, that's the shit that is creepy to me.
That shit's creepy to me too. This is a side note, but I really wish that all these laws and rules and whatnot are standalone things.
That's a big problem.
It's a big problem.
It's a big problem. And getting shit put into bills.
Yeah, because like I'm not leaning one way or the other in this discussion, but all the time you can have, I'm going to exaggerate for the point of emphasis, but you can have like, we're giving the American public $10 trillion. Here's a bill. Someone says, I don't want that. There's the amendment says we have to kill thousands of puppies for it.
Yeah.
And they're like, you hate America.
Or they're like, you want your money?
Yeah.
Then you got to kill puppies.
Then you got to, yeah. So.
Or they're like, hey, here's a tax relief because we're going to put in a bunch of casinos. And you're like, cool. And then they're like, but we're also going to ruin 1,000 acres of federally protected land to build oil refinery on or something. Yeah. And you're like, well, why can't they be two separate things? They're not dumb. They're like, we know we're never going to get that one passed unless we get something piggybacking it to get it through the system.
Exactly.
It's very smart.
It is smart, and that's why it's never going to go away. But Jesus Christ, does it need to?
Well, those massive bills are the big problem. Like that one that they passed for the Reconstruction Infrastructure Bill.
Yeah.
Like if you looked at some of the stuff on there, like I saw a guy breaking down some of it. It's like, I don't know, a couple hundred or 1,000 pages long.
And that's
you're just like, you're like, wait a minute, this is called the infrastructure bill. Then why is there all this other shit in here? Yeah. Where like, and you're talking like $1 trillion. So like you can fund a lot of shit with $1 trillion. And you're like, look, 900 billion went to this. And you're like, where's the other 100 million or 100 billion? And they're like, yeah, other places, things and stuff. And you're like, well, what? Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, it's freaking terrible.
So
I had a follow up to that. I forget what it was. Things and stuff, 90 billion, Infrastructure Act.
Grouping things together in bills.
Okay, it's gone.
See, I go back and forth on the other thing too, which I'm pretty sure I'm like 95% sure I agree with at least a number on this for like term limits for senators, right?
Yeah.
So there's always the problem when you look at the presidency, like because it's 4 years, let's say. And as you get older, I guess you just pay attention more because you're a loser and you don't go out anymore and fun is not around. So you just pay attention to politics.
Yeah, fun doesn't exist.
Yeah. So, but what you realize is like, okay, so the president gets in about halfway through their term, they're starting up for their reelection again. And they're just really focused on that.
Yeah.
And it's got to be the same for every public official, public office holder. So on one side, you're like, okay, like if there wasn't term limits, then the people would actually be able to focus more instead of trying to like hell to get reelected.
Yeah.
But then again, it's like, well, if you elect a shithead, you don't want him to be in there for 8 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you elect it lower, but it's almost like they have to do something with like what they're allowed to almost like a for sports, how they have a cap on how much they can spend.
Yeah.
Or something. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Specifically going to the presidency thing, a lot of presidencies wait until their second term in office to start doing what they intend to do, because nothing that you can do is going to make people happy.
No.
Someone's going to be upset, and the people who are upset are going to be louder than the people who are going to benefit from that. So if you wanted to, I don't know, make a river go across America for some ungodly reason. You know what? Railroad. We'll say railroad because that actually makes sense. If you want to make a new railroad system go from the East Coast to the West Coast, you're going to wait till your second term to do that, because the people who are going to be shouting, "You're wasting our fucking money," are going to kick you out.
Yeah.
So if you start that in the first term, you're not going to get your second term.
Yeah.
So a lot of presidencies wait to their second term to really like dig down and start like hammering out what they intend to do. And I feel like that's a big problem. We can't have 4 years of like,
yeah. It's fucked up though, because the more people you elect to a certain thing, it's like the longer the red tape thing is about getting anything done.
Yeah.
So I like and I don't like the one person in charge thing, and it's really not one person because there's checks and balances. But when you have like senators and stuff that have been in there for 30 years,
it's
that
like
needs to change. It's like you ever play a video game, like one specific video game all the time, and you figure out like exactly how to do the right stuff, and it's almost like not even fair because you're cheating.
Yeah.
Right?
You know what's going to happen.
Yeah. But at the same time, if someone was like, I need somebody that's very efficient at this game to fix a problem, you're like, I'm your guy.
Yeah.
But then if someone's like, hey, I need somebody really efficient at this game because I can't get past this level and there's a guy that's better than me, so why don't you play as me and get me through this level? And you're like, well, that's like really cheating.
Yeah.
But that's...
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
I think... I have two big... I think we talked about this one before, but if I was able to change... This is the most I think we've ever talked about politics on.
It is. And it would start off the CIA, and we're so dumb we can't even stay on that.
No, we can't.
But go ahead.
So two things. One, I think we have too many people, or too many politicians in general. And I believe that it served the purpose once upon a time because we split the Senate and the House of Representatives. So we can have two senators per state.
So from my understanding... The whole politician thing, I'm just going to, from what I remember, it was basically before we had like U.S. Postal Service was all good and shit like that. The reason why you had like mayors, senators, governors and shit like that was that each town would basically go to their portion of people that they were in charge of and get their collected ideas and votes and speak for the people.
Okay.
Those people would then go back to the person in charge of them. So like the people would go to the mayor would go to the governor, and they would say, hey, the people from my county want to vote this way.
Got it.
I took a small percentage of votes, 50%. And basically you all did that. So that way you just trickle down the amount of people talking about what they want. And then you finally get to the top where you're talking about senators, talking to the president, talking to his cabinet.
Okay.
And then they say, hey, listen, all my guys took a vote in Jersey, and all of them said that X amount of people want this thing passed, or this is how our state feels on these issues, because they couldn't mail in ballots and count them all. It was just they didn't have the system down.
Yeah.
That is kind of outdated now because we don't need these representatives to collect those common thoughts. Like, we basically are just like, put the bill out, we'll vote on it, and then just have somebody execute it.
Yeah.
But that's not how it works still. It's the person that's in charge gets to decide what goes on, which is good and bad.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I'm sorry. Continue.
But I'm not even talking about like that layered system. I mean specifically in the between the House and the Senate.
Oh, right.
Because there's 2 senators per state.
Mm-hmm.
And then the House is based on population, right? How many
to a certain extent.
To a certain extent?
Yeah.
How many House of Representatives? There are 435 people in the House of Representatives. That's way too many. That is egregious. Like, and I understand where the foundation of this came from, because you wanted to protect the smaller states, so you had to have the Senate, and you want to allow bigger states to represent their population, so you have to have representatives. But realistically speaking, that means we have 535 people in one branch of the federal government, and it's clear that it's it's constantly deadlocked with nonsense. I just saw, I forget who it was, but someone is coming up for re-election on for one of those in Jersey, and she was touting that she went across party lines to get such and such done, and she was talking about legislation for, I forget what it was called, but it was for the tar pits that they used to have in the army.
Yeah,
they had these tar pits, and they were severely toxic.
They're burn pits.
Yeah, they were burn pits.
Yeah.
They were extremely toxic. So anyone who was at any base that had these burn pits,
which is everyone
was getting like really sick. So there was legislation saying we're going to basically pay for your health care. And I was thinking to myself, like, you're like touting this like it's like this big momentous like hooray, but you guys caused all these people to be sick, and they knew what they were doing. Like, it wasn't like a secret. Like, they knew it was toxic and it wasn't going to be good for these people. So you knew you were making people sick, and then you had to sit there and be like, should we help them out though? All right, fine. It took years to get it passed, and now you're like touting it like it's this huge victory, which it's not because it's good that it happened, in my opinion.
It's gray.
It's gray. But I feel like that is one of the smallest things you could have done, and you're touting it like it's the end all be all. Like, we should be getting so much more accomplished, but we can't because we have 535 different opinions.
See, I agree with you, and I think that having more people both hurts and helps that.
Yeah.
So with things like that, it's like people that don't have kids. Even people that have kids, but they're like, why is my money going to education?
Yeah.
I don't want my money to go to education. But then people that have kids are like, well, I want better schools and I want this. So if you ask somebody on like a one-on-one basis, when they're like, hey, listen, would you be able to give an extra 0.5% of taxes a year? And they'd be like, absolutely not. Why would I do that? And they're like, well, it's for veterans who worked on tar pits so they can have health insurance.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, fuck that. Where's my fucking benefit?
Yeah.
You get a lot of that if you've got a fucking closed door answer.
You would get a lot
right?
of that, yeah.
Because how many people have you just got to give a 0.5% for? There's a lot of those cases, right? So
there's 1.5 million.
Yes, there's 1.5 million. The voting thing, like for the smaller states, you have the 2 senators, but the House of Representatives, I think that part of the reason why they did that, number one, it's off population, right? So if you're going to use it off population and some of these states start booming, you have to then raise it with the population growth. You have to add more as they grow.
Yeah, you do.
So if you're using that system, it has to be representative or the system doesn't work.
Yeah.
The other thing is like for the states that have like all farmers in it and shit, if they didn't have like a skewed thing for their state, it'd be like, how many people that live in cities give a fuck about farms? They eat from them. They buy shit from them all the time. But they're not going to vote anything for a farm. They're just like, oh, fuck that. So it'd basically be like they have no voice now. And they're one of the things that kind of runs the country.
Yeah.
So they have to like make these weird, but it's all manipulated. It's all manipulated. That's the problem.
It's a good concept that's been corrupted over time, in my opinion.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And like we keep spinning our wheels because there's so many things that we could complain and talk and all this stuff about, like what's wrong and there's good and there's bad and blah, blah, blah. But it's like the same thing with the CIA talk going back to the beginning. There's parts that are good and necessary, and there's parts that aren't and are unnecessary.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like, as a whole, is the system broken or is the way the system is run broken?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
You know, and I think here it's more of a case of the system, the way the system is run is broken.
Yeah, I agree with that.
The manipulation and all that stuff. So I don't know what we're going to do to fix that.
Probably nothing.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're just going to talk about it on this itty-bitty podcast.
We're just going to complain about it.
We're just going to complain. We ain't going to write our senators. No, sirree. I do declare I will not write a letter. Yeah, that's all I got. Once again, we fucking rolled the ball right off the fucking cliff.
It was a good topic, though. I like that whole CIA should it exist thing.
Yeah,
it's a.
At the end of the day,
thinker.
Your vote. I'm going to let you do first because I already have my answer.
It has to, in my opinion.
I agree.
It has to.
I agree.
You can't not.
Yeah, I think number one, it would be very obvious as soon as it didn't exist, and then we'd be kind of fucked.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a necessary good and evil.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, that's it.
All right, guys.
Your phones are all going to be tapped while you're watching this, just so you know.
Oh, we're going to be followed after this podcast.
They're going to hear a lot of dick jokes and T-shirts about dinosaur promotion.
You can
Have fun, guys.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. All right, guys, let us know what you think about this topic in the comment section down below. Should the CIA exist? Please don't start a flame war. Or start one. I don't give a flying fuck. Speaking of dinosaur T-shirts, you can get your own Bro Down Pro memorabilia by going to brodownpro.com. We sell a whole bunch of shit on there. We have T-shirts, hoodies, backpacks, blah, blah, blah,
Mugs.
blah, blah. Mugs.
Koozies.
That's on Etsy. We have to put that on the site. We'll catch you guys next time.
Go to Etsy.
You're listening to Bro Down Podcast all fucking day.